Hi, I'm Chris McBrien, a Gen-Xer, and the pop culture from my generation is awesome.
And I'm Yancy Eaton, a Millennial, and the pop culture from my generation is dope.
Episode 29, Best Picture, Oscar Snubs. Hey, Chris McBrien here, along with Yancy Eaton, this pop culture world. Yancy, what's going on in Florida? What's happening?
The weather's been pretty nice.
Nice.
I'm in like this weird, I mention baseball occasionally. I try not to make this a baseball show because, this is a separate pop culture podcast. This is a different project. It's not our old podcast that we did together. But in the same sense, too, we also have a lot of carryover listeners from the past podcasts. And,
Yes.
So it's not like a surprise that you and I both like baseball. I'm in like this weird funk where like I want to watch baseball so bad that like today I spent like 3 hours watching like random highlight videos on YouTube, seriously, for like 2 or 3 hours. It's just, I'm so ready for baseball to be here. I'm so ready to start drafting my fantasy baseball teams and stuff. And it's just, having a nice break from that kind of like monotony of like just going to work every day with nothing on TV to watch, and, being able to do this podcast and talk about, literally anything. Every single week it's something different. It's been a really, really nice break from, the monotony that is like my life. So
it has been. It's been a lot of fun getting together with you every week and talking. So recently we had Valentine's Day, and I got this really nice card for my wife, and she included these tickets in it. And she said, okay, these tickets are good for every time that I want to watch a movie that I want to watch, I cash in a ticket with her. So she's so wonderful. So of course, I'm making her watch, what I'm like. We talk about this every week. I make her watch like all these old movies, like stuff from the 70s and 80s that I love and all this. But then I decided to kind of return the favor recently. So what I did was I said to her, let's watch tonight. Let's watch any movie you want. This was just like a week ago. I said, any movie you want to watch. So she's like, I want to watch La La Land. So I was like, oh boy, well, I don't know. This isn't really my kind of movie. You know what I mean? I'm not a huge musical guy. I do like some of them, but I thought, I don't think that she's going to love this movie, and I'm probably not going to like it. But you know what? I make her watch like Meatballs and, Caddyshack and the Blues Brothers over and over again. So I figured, what's the least I can do? I'll watch this movie. So we watched La La Land, and you want to know the funny thing? She didn't even really like it that much. I loved it. I absolutely loved that movie. Yancy, have you seen it?
Yeah, I just recently watched it maybe 3 or 4 days ago.
What'd you think?
Man, I don't even know where to start. Do we just want to like talk about it back and forth a little bit? Overall, I liked it a lot. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Unlike you, where musicals aren't really my thing. Like the big productions with like a bunch of people singing and dancing all at once, and all this music and stuff, like over the top lyrics, and just like that whole like huge production value of like most musicals that you think of, that does not appeal to me at all. What I love about this movie is like it's a quote unquote musical, like finger quotes musical, but most of the musical scenes in this are with 2 or 3 people. It's very small. It's more like Singing in the Rain than it is like some sort of like Grease musical where you have like 15 and 20 people dancing, and there's a lot of stuff happening in the background and stuff. I just think it's like I don't really know what it's trying to say from like a macro level. Like it's one of those films where like it doesn't really reflect like a sign of the times, basically. But it is a fantastic film from start to beginning. I don't think that Ryan Gosling, I don't think either of the main characters are fantastic singers or fantastic dancers, but they're incredible actors, and they do everything just good enough to where like the whole film just works super, super well. What'd you think of it?
Okay, so here we go. So you mentioned a really good point that a lot of the musical numbers only had 2 people in it, except for the opening shot. And when the opening shot, remember on the highway and everybody's stopped in traffic, and they do this big, huge musical number, and it goes from car to car and person to person, and they're all singing and they're dancing and they're running around. They're obviously doing it to playback, but it's incredible. The scene gets done, and I turned to my wife. I said, "Did you notice anything about that scene?" And she's like, "I don't know what." And I said, "It was all done in one continuous shot."
Yeah, one camera.
One camera, one shot, moving around through the whole time, no edits. I'm like, honey, you don't understand. You get down to the end of this unbelievably choreographed scene, and that one guy on the bike does a misstep as he goes up the car and comes down. Sorry, halt, cut. We got to start all over again right at the beginning. You know what I mean? Like, that was an incredible scene, the way that was shot. So that one had lots of people in the musical number, but you're right. Most of the other ones were smaller ones. And again, I remember when they were walking out in the moonlight and they walked over to the bench, and she sits down and she starts taking her shoes off. I said to my wife, they're going to do a tap number. And she's like, what? How do you know? I said, she's putting on tap shoes, and he's wearing tap shoes. She's like, what? And all of a sudden they go into this tap number, and I thought it was brilliant. You know, you were talking about some of the themes, what does it really mean overall? To me, and I think, tonight we're going to talk a little bit about Oscars. I think it's definitely the favorite. No big surprise there. It's the favorite to win Best Picture Oscar, and I think it's going to win Best Picture Oscar for one reason and one reason only, because Hollywood types that are voting for the awards love this kind of movie. The theme in this movie is very, very, very crystal clear, that at the end of the day, if you want to make it in Hollywood, you want to make it in La La Land, you got to make a choice. You either go for your dream or you get to have your relationship, but you can't have both. So you got to give up the relationship to go for your dream, and that's what it's all about. And that's what I thought was very, very... Okay, by the way, spoilers. I'm just going to say right now, if you haven't seen it, there's some spoilers. Yep. Anybody out there that's listening, that's why I thought it was very gratifying when it gets to the end of the movie, and you're like, oh, they're going to get back together. She's with her husband, and she goes in the club and sees him. But I'm so glad that they didn't do that. She got up, and she walked out, and she did turn and look at him, but it's over, because you know what? You make a choice in this world when you want to go for it in La La Land. And if you choose your dream, most of the time that means giving up, your love life or the relationship that you have in place at the time, and you go for your dream, and that's the way that it works out, and that's just the way it is. And I think so many people in Hollywood relate to that message and relate to that theme that they will vote for that movie. That's I think it's a hands down going to win Best Picture for that reason. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm glad that you mentioned the last scene and also the scene on the bench, because those were literally my two favorite scenes in the entire film. So like I said, they're not fantastic dancers. They're not trained tap dancers or anything like that. But I thought they both did just enough to where the dancing was a compliment to the entire scene. It wasn't the focal point of the scene. And it was just beautiful. This movie, like I talked about, the big opening scene, I can appreciate how difficult it was. I know that it must have been an incredible undertaking. For me personally, from an entertainment standpoint, that's not what really gets me going. You know what I mean? But for me, it was all the little, really little things that this movie does so well. They're singing this song talking about how they're not, I'm paraphrasing, but they're not super interested in each other. There's no chance of us getting together is basically what they're singing. And then at the very end of the scene, whenever he finally finds her car, she's like, "Oh, do you want me to drive you to your car?" He's like, "Oh no, I'm just right here. I'm just right down the, this block, whatever." But no, he's not. He's, a mile or 2 miles or who knows how long, all the way back at the party where they first started walking from. He is into this girl. You know what I mean? And it doesn't say anything explicitly like that. It just shows him walking back, and you see him walking back up to the party. Or making little jokes about Hollywood culture, or Los Angeles, LA, libtards, what do you want to say, where she's like, "Oh, will you grab my keys for me? It's the Prius." And it shows the the rack of keys, and it's literally 25 different Prius keychains. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Little, just really little subtle things like that. And there's no corny laugh track or anything like that. It's just really small, elegant things that it did. It's more like Singing in the Rain, as I said, as opposed to a Grease, which is over the top cheese and just super, super campy and stuff. Just real quickly, just to talk about the last scene, it was so perfect. I went through the whole movie I'm enjoying this film a lot. This is a very good film. But that last scene, like you said, they're building this up to be this woman, she's in love with him. He pushes her to pursue her dreams and stuff. And, he has a small part in it to make it happen for her. And it works out for her. Eventually she becomes this big star. And, and then he has his jazz club, and it's named, he took the name that she had recommended for him, and the same logo, and everything works out perfectly. And then you realize, no, this woman has a husband. She has a child. Life isn't always so perfect like that. And to see her, be thrust back into that life, and to see him like that, typical Hollywood would be oh yeah, we're going to give the audience what they want, basically. And to not have the audience get what they want like that, it's an incredibly unpopular move, but it just worked so well. To see him play and know that he had made it. And, obviously he sees her billboards all around. They make a good point to show, literally she's walking down the street or he's walking down the street, and you can see billboards of her at bus stops and stuff. So they both know collectively that they've made it. You know what I mean?
I really love in that scene too, when they're looking at each other And you're wondering, okay, where's this going to go? Because the typical Hollywood movie is she's going to run up on stage and they're going to hug and that's going to be the end. And they look at each other, and then I loved the way that they did it because it flashed back to when he was working in the club with J.K. Simmons, and he walked past her and bumped into her and just kind of walked past, was being a jerk. And they replayed that scene and they went back and he swept her up.
It's an embrace.
And he picked her and he kissed her, and then it was like and then they flashed through the whole movie again of all the things that would happen. Sometimes if you just make one slight tweak, if you do one thing different, it can change everything. But at the end you realize it doesn't change destiny. It doesn't change fate. It doesn't change the idea of going for your dream. And I thought that was just a great, I loved it. I thought it was phenomenal. I think, and the thing is too, in any other year, Moonlight would win Best Picture by far. It's so good. But up against a movie like La La Land, I think La La Land will win Best Picture. I think it should win Best Picture. And I think, that's the way it is. But that being said, I'm sure that there's lots of times where movies have been snubbed, because you can almost say like Moonlight kind of getting snubbed is not winning Best Picture, and it kind of deserves to win in a way. So what do you say that we run down a top 5 list of our, we'll just run down snubs of Best Pictures, movies that should have won Best Picture but never did. How about we do that? You ready?
Yep, I am 100% on board. Let's do it.
Let's go. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh.
My parents watched this with me and they hated it, like a lot of movies that I've already mentioned on the show.
Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Man, Eddie Murphy did some of the best impressions I have ever heard.
Shabadoo and Boogaloo Shrimp.
Chris.
I've rewatched it as an adult. I still like it.
This brassiere is killing me and this garter belt is riding up my ass.
Oh my.
What could possibly go wrong?
My parents pieced out like halfway through it.
I'm good, thanks.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so let's start. Before we get started with your number 5, I should mention, like I say, we're going to go through our movies that we think should have won Best Picture but never did. And I think, for me, I just want to preface this because I think there's some obvious ones from the 90s that I'm sure you're going to mention, so I'm going to stay away from them. Like, most likely, 94, 98, 99 are 3 that just stand out in my mind. But I'm going to stay away from those. I decided to go with stuff out of, like, the 70s and 80s instead, because I think the 90s is a little bit more your wheelhouse. So I'm going to go with ones from my time. Since that's sort of the overall theme of this podcast. But anyway, so number 5, what do you got? Movie that should have won Best Picture but never did.
For me, this one is in 2010, The King's Speech won, and I watched The King's Speech in theaters. I actually had to do it for a college project, like I could get extra credit or something. So I took my brother who... my brother, he likes sci-fi films, he likes action films and stuff like that, but The King's Speech is not high on the list of movies that he would, willingly pay to go see in theaters. So I took him to see it, and it was a good film, and I forget the actor's name. He's a really popular actor, but I'm blanking. But it was a good film, but it was a long film. You could have cut an hour and a half off of it, and it wouldn't have changed the outline of the film at all. And it won Best Picture. And looking back now, this was just a few years ago, but it already seems like incredibly, just like misguided, and like the film just doesn't hold up. You know what I mean? Like it was the flavor of the week basically. And like, just to look back and see all the films that it did win over is just, in that 2010 was a fantastic year for movies, right? So everybody thought that The Social Network was going to win, which personally I think it should have. You still had Black Swan, you had Inception, Chris Nolan's film, you had Toy Story 3, which is one of the most underrated films, and The Fighter. All these movies were just, I watched all of them in theaters. That movie, or that year as a whole, was incredibly strong, but for The King's Speech to win, like I said, such a throwaway film. It was basically like, it was playing off to this stereotype where it's like, for the last 20 to 25 years, like the best actor, a lot of times it'll go to like a guy who's playing a gay person and he's not gay, or it'll go to a person playing a transgender person who's not actually transgender. And like with this, it was him playing somebody who has a speech impediment, but he doesn't actually have a speech impediment. It just doesn't, the film doesn't, like I said, we were talking about with La La Land, I wonder what it says as a big picture. This film says nothing. And the fact that it won over The Social Network in 2010 is just an absolute travesty for me.
There you go. Okay, I'm going back to 1982. The winner that year was Gandhi. But I believe the winner of the Best Picture of that year should have been Tootsie. I don't know if you've ever heard of this movie. Yancy,
I have not.
So Tootsie is a movie with Dustin Hoffman, and it is, a lot of people I think just think of it on the surface as a comedy, because here's the idea of the film. I love Tootsie; it's such a good movie. So Dustin Hoffman in it plays an actor, Michael Dorsey. He's basically playing himself in this movie, and he is such a jerk, and he's so hard to work with. So he's just so much like himself in real life. He's so hard to work with that no one will hire him, and he's in New York. Nobody will hire the guy, because he's just a pain in the ass to work with. So he finally decides that he wants to go out for a soap opera, and he dresses up as a woman and goes and gets the part in the lead of the soap opera as a woman. And so it could be played broad for comedy, but it isn't. And that's the thing, is I think it's mistaken. People think of it as a comedy movie. It has a few funny moments. Mostly the one line that's delivered by Bill Murray in it, in one of the scenes, is just so funny. But overall, it's more of a drama. And I think the thing is, for me, anybody out there that's an actor or is aspiring to be an actor or is just interested in acting, period, go and watch the movie Tootsie, because what it is it's basically a master class in acting. And as an ensemble piece, it's a master class in how to act. Some of the people in that, like I say, Dustin Hoffman was great. You got Jessica Lange and Terry Garr, but even Sidney Pollack. So Sidney Pollack is the director, and he even acts in it and plays a part. He plays Michael Dorsey's agent. And it's so funny because he's not an actor, but there's so much truth in that, because he's directing Dustin Hoffman in this movie. And Dustin Hoffman's a pain in the ass. So the whole scenes that are taking place is how much Michael Dorsey's a pain in the ass to work with as his agent, and it's just so truthful. The movie is absolutely brilliant. I remember seeing an interview with Dustin Hoffman years later, and he got all emotional because he was saying, that movie was never a comedy to me. That movie was about what it's like to be a woman. That movie is about what it's like to be a woman, how there's double standards in this world, and how they're held up to different standards, and how there's a glass ceiling in front of them, and all those things. I think it was the best movie '82, and it should have won over Gandhi. Gandhi was a big, huge, sweeping, epic movie, and Hollywood loves those kind of things, but Tootsie was the best movie in '82. So, number 4, what do you got?
Number 4 for me, I think, is going to be kind of like a surprise to some people, but it's one of my favorite movies, and I've watched it maybe 10 or 15 times in my lifetime. It was exposed to me by, I think I mentioned this in a past show, but an ex-girlfriend, my first girlfriend, this was her favorite movie, and it's kind of staying on theme with the whole La La Land thing, but Singing in the Rain in 1952, it lost the Best Picture to The Greatest Show on Earth. I've never seen The Greatest Show on Earth, so I don't mean to, dog it or anything like that. I did a little bit of research on it, and I've seen Singing in the Rain. I've done an extensive research on it, and I mean, any type of best of, if you go by Time or AFI or the Academy Awards, like best of or anything like that, they all list Singing in the Rain as like a top 10 or 15 film of all time. Like, that's one of those films where like it is incredibly timeless. There's so many movies that you could basically give it as like an influence. Like, they pulled so many different things from it. It was groundbreaking from like a cinematography standpoint, just from a choreography, and just it's a classic, basically. Like, it's in the the National Congress Library, basically, like, to make sure that like it's preserved for mankind for all time. And it lost the Best Picture nominee. It was one of those things where
it wasn't even nominated.
It wasn't even nominated.
Nominated in 52. Nope, that's the travesty. Yep.
And I think so more back then. They were looking more so for commercial hits. I think that was kind of like the stereotype of award nominees and award winners of those decades of like the 40s, 50s, and 60s was, if you were a commercial success, you were more likely to get that type of admiration and, an acknowledgement from the community. And, it didn't take off in theaters. It was actually one of those slow to build kind of things. And then, a year and a half, 2-3 years later, it became, this classic, this instant classic that everybody, had kind of latched onto. So it's weird seeing like these movies, I'm going to mention another movie pretty soon here too, but these movies that, stand the test of time in 50, 60, 70, 100 years, maybe not 100, but you know what I mean? But decades later, that people are still saying, and every critic you ever talk to, they all list them as their favorite movies and the most powerful movies of all time. It couldn't even win that year. It's just, to be honest with you, it kind of discredits the Academy Awards in general. But that's not a hero or another. But that's my number 4 is Singing in the Rain getting snubbed back in 1952.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to go up to 1984, and the winner that year was Amadeus. But I'm telling you, the movie, and Amadeus was okay, but I mean, really,
Amadeus is awesome.
It's good, but I mean, Tom Hulce running around as Mozart, it was good. It was an interesting movie, but it was not the best picture that year. I'm sorry. The best movie that year was by far The Killing Fields. It is phenomenal movie, and it is one of the movies that it gets me every time that I've seen it. So it's just so incredible. So it's about, if you're not aware of The Killing Fields, I don't think you've ever seen it, Yancy. I'm assuming you haven't seen it.
I have not.
So it's about the Vietnam War, but it's about what happens in Cambodia next to Vietnam. And there's bombing that's going on, and then there's these they're saying don't bomb. It's going to destabilize the country and all this. But what happens is the story's about these two journalists. So this journalist, and it's a true story. These are real people. So Sidney Schomburg was a journalist with the New York Times, and he's over there covering the war in Vietnam. And he's covering Cambodia, and it's basically his assistant, who's sort of like a self-proclaimed journalist, and his name's Dith Pran, and but he's not like really a journalist, but he's kind of like a self-proclaimed journalist. Anyway, so they're doing the story together, and then what happens is of course Cambodia falls, and the Khmer Rouge take over the country, and they basically they go in there and they say, we need to get. You guys got to get out of the country if you want to get out safe. So they're able to get Dith Pran's family out. So he's married, he's got a wife and a couple kids, and they're able to get them out. And at the gate, when they're getting them into the embassy and getting them on a helicopter to get them out of the country, Dith Pran won't go. He's like, I'm not leaving. And Sydney's like, what are you talking about? You got to get on the helicopter. Dith, Pran, you got to get on the helicopter. He's like, I don't want to. He goes, Sydney, I'm a journalist too, Sydney, and I need to be here. I need to get this story out too. And this is a true story. This is two real human beings that this happened to. And so I almost get emotional thinking about this movie every time. So Dith Pran is saying, no, I'm going to stay. I'm a journalist. I need to be here with you. And he's like, Pran, it's not safe. No, I'm going to stay. So he stays. And then what happens is then they finally decide things get so bad. They got to get all the Americans and all the foreign press out of the country. But everybody has to have a passport to get out. Well, Pran doesn't have a passport. So he has to stay behind, and he gets put into a concentration camp. And then Sidney goes back to New York, and of course is there, and he sees his wife and his kids. And he's like, I'm sure your dad's alive and all this. And this is a true story. And the cool thing is that the actor that played Dith Pran in the movie, he was played by Dr. Hang S. Ingor, who was a doctor. He was not an actor, had no experience as an actor, but you know what he did do is he lived that. He himself was in Cambodia, was captured, was put into a camp. He lived through that experience. His performance was so good, he won Best Supporting Actor that year, never having acted before. His performance, on his face, just how he goes through everything, being in this camp and everything is just so incredible. And then I don't want to give anything away, but the end of the movie comes, and they play John Lennon's Imagine. And I'm not gonna give this away. I don't want to spoil anything because you haven't seen it, Yancy. You have to do me a favor. Every week I tell you got to watch a movie, right? I'm always bugging you. Here's one. You absolutely have to watch The Killing Fields, please, because I know you're a smart guy. You love history. You're going to love this movie. So I'm not going to give away the end. But at the end of the movie, they play John Lennon's Imagine, and every single time I watch the movie, I cry. Every single time. It just moves me. And because I think it's just, I can't believe that this actually happened. Sidney Schomburg and Dith Pran were real people, and this happened. I can't believe the end of the movie. It just resonates with me to this day. It by far was better than Amadeus. It was the best movie of 1984. So, on to your number 3, my friend. Watch The Killing Fields. You gotta watch it, dude.
I definitely have to see that because I'm a huge Amadeus fan. I've watched it on Netflix maybe 5 or 6 times. That is a beautiful, beautiful film. And I don't want listeners to take away from this that we're dogging other films. If a film wins out, it's almost always a good film. It's not like it's a bad film, but just sometimes that it's winning over other films just is something that you can't overlook.
Amadeus was a very entertaining movie. It's a very, very good movie, and F. Murray Abraham was great in that part. Tom Hulce was great too. But the thing is, for me, every once in a while, they call them moving pictures because they should move you in some way. And every once in a while, a movie comes along that's a game changer. For me, it's The Killing Fields. I remember years later they made what was the movie with Don Cheadle? It was Hotel Rwanda. And I remember watching that and thinking, there's a lot of the same themes in here, and they're trying to do a lot of the same things thematically that they did in The Killing Fields, but not quite as good. That movie was not quite as good, let me tell you.
It was good, though.
It was good. Chris. It was good, but not if you've seen The Killing. And the thing with The Killing Fields that's really good, too, is that The Killing Fields, it's shot in a style that's almost documentary. It almost looked, and the fact that these are real people, and I mean, Sidney Schomburg is played by Sam Waterston, from Law and Order, very younger Sam Waterston. This movie will absolutely move. If you watch this movie and it doesn't move you, dude, something's wrong. You got to watch this movie. So anyway, sorry. Number 3.
Number 3 for me goes all the way back to 2015. This was one of those like rare years where I actually managed to watch all of the nominees for Best Picture before the Oscars. So Whiplash, The Theory of Everything, Selma, The Imitation Game, Grand Budapest Hotel, Boyhood, American Sniper, and of course the eventual winner, which was Birdman. Now, again, I have to stress this. I do not think Birdman is a bad film. I think it is a very, very good film. Very, very good film. I don't know if it's super rewatchable. Like it's one of those, like you watch it once, it has that effect on you. And I mean, if you see it on cable 4 years later, I'm not necessarily sure you're going to, record it or watch it in its entirety. But all those films, like I like to like rank out like what I thought of the films and just the ones that I've seen and kind of do like my own list of where I would rank them. And it was basically last out of all these films. I mean, I would have put, Whiplash for me. It actually the same director as La La Land, ironically, and J.K. Simmons is in both of them too, which is kind of cool because he plays a hard ass so well. I mean, he was like he was the band instructor in Whiplash. He was the club owner in La La Land. He's just fantastic. But it's one of those things where I think it just got a lot more credit than it deserves simply because it was an original idea and the acting was really solid in it, but I just didn't feel like it was more deserving than any of these other films. Like The Imitation Game, that was a deeply powerful movie. Boyhood, I mean, just the production of it and how long it took and just how in depth, and I mean, the acting in it was just flawless from top to bottom. It's just one of the, I mean, even like American Sniper, like I'm not, super into those types of movies anymore. I used to really be into that genre of film with American Sniper, but all of a sudden I'm blanking on his name, but the main actor, he even developed like little like facial tics and stuff like that whenever he was, doing this sniper, stuff, whatever, like little like eye twitches and stuff like that. Like the level of detail and just, I don't know, I'm rambling just a bit, but like it felt like almost like the safest pick for Best Picture of 2015 and like a year where there were just so many good movies. And like I said, like it always feels like there's like this old guard of like the Academy Awards who are rewarding kind of like movies that they want to see made or that they personally liked, as opposed to like a movie that's really kind of like challenging and like pushing stuff forward. And that's kind of like how I felt with the 2015 Academy Awards. I don't hate Birdman, but man, I really would have loved to have seen like Whiplash win or something. That was just a fantastic film. So that's what my number 3, Chris.
Yeah, number 3. So I'm going to plow through mine a little bit quick. So my number 3, 1981. I'm going back to Chariots of Fire won that year, kind of a surprise. Much like you, with the year you just mentioned, I would say that any of the other 4 nominees were more deserving of winning than Chariots of Fire. So first you had Atlantic City, which was a great movie, lots of intrigue. Burt Lancaster was great. There was the whole scene with the lemons, great. Reds, Warren Beatty really broke against type, for himself making that. To make a movie in the middle of the Cold War that was very sympathetic to the Russians was a very interesting movie to make. I thought it was good. On Golden Pond, man, it was so good. How do you take a great play and actually make it work on the big screen in such a great way? You do it like On Golden Pond. It was phenomenal movie. Henry Fonda was one of the most moving performances, you can imagine. And then, of course, the movie that I think should have won was Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was nominated and it didn't win. Any one of those 4 movies should have won over Chariots of Fire. So that's my number 3, 1981. What do you got for number 2?
Number 2 for me is, like I said, it's an older film. Citizen Kane is wildly heralded by everyone as one of the greatest, if not the greatest film of all time. And it did not win an Oscar for Best Picture. It did not win an Oscar for Best Director. In fact, it basically got swept in almost every single category, minus winning an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. The eventual winner that year of the Best Picture and Best Director both came from How Green Was My Valley, which I'm not sure if you've seen that before. Of course you have.
I'm familiar with it. I mean, Citizen Kane was better. Here Comes Mr. Jordan was good that year too. But anyway, Maltese Falcon, there was lots, right?
Yep. You saw it for your 10th birthday, I'm sure, in theaters, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm so old. Yeah, no, actually, no. The first movie that I saw in theaters was actually Battleship Potemkin. Actually, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. But this is just like one of those like weird footnotes.
You have to Google that, Rancy, to figure it out. 1925 silent film. Anyway.
Yeah. But like I said, it's just one of these weird footnotes in history where the consensus #1 film of all time, and I've personally watched it as well. I watched it in school. I've watched it on on Netflix and stuff a couple of times. It is a fantastic film, and there are so many films where they basically take that same type of premise, that same like nostalgic longing and all these different themes and elements and ways of shooting the film. And it has literally carried over for decades. And the fact that barely won an award, it almost got swept at the Academy Awards and didn't win Best Picture. I mean, it's just a really odd historical footnote. And I honestly, I think it's a huge black eye for the Academy Awards. So that's my number 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's the greatest American film ever made. And it was a bomb at the time. And people didn't know what to make of it, right? And they had this brash. And the thing was, too, back then, you got the Hollywood studio system cranking people out. And all of a sudden, you got this brash director coming from the Mercury Players, this theater group, and is putting together a movie. And he's flipping Hollywood on its head with his ability to put cameras through metal grates and through windows and downstairs and do long shots and deep focus and all this. And I just don't think the establishment was ready for him or for that in general. But you're definitely right. Okay, so we're on to number 2, right? 1980. Ordinary People won Best Picture that year, but what should have won? Yeah, I just mentioned Citizen Kane as one of the greatest American films of all time. Yeah, well, I think this is one of the greatest American films of the last 40 years, up there with The Godfather and There Will Be Blood, and that's Raging Bull. Raging Bull in 1980 definitely should have beat Ordinary People. Ordinary People was good. It just wasn't great. And when you think about that movie, first-time director Robert Redford, to me, he seemed like he was more obsessed with photography and using the rule of thirds to frame his scenes in that movie rather than making a really great film. That's just my opinion. I mean, Mary Tyler Moore was great in it. She was fantastic in that movie, but there's no way it was better than Raging Bull. I still think it's Scorsese's best film of his career. That's my number 2. What do you got for number 1?
Number 1 for me, I'm just going to really quickly, because I know everybody has seen this movie or should see it. I'm just going to rattle off all the awards that it won that year and then tell you that it did not win Best Picture, okay? Yeah. It won Best Motion Picture at the Golden Globes, Film of the Year from the London Critics Circle, Best Picture from the Las Vegas Film Critics Society, Best Picture of Los Angeles Film Critics Society, Best Film from New York Film Critics, Best Film from Online Critics Society, Best Film from Southeastern Film Critics, and Best Picture from the Toronto Film Critics.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna see if I can.
It also ended up losing Best Picture in 1998 to Shakespeare in Love.
I was gonna say it's 1998. Saving Private Ryan. I agree.
Saving Private Ryan. Seriously, one of the most just awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping films I have ever watched. Obviously it's rated R. Whenever it came out, I was still a kid. My mom, sat us all down and forced us to watch it. The realness of war. And I understand, I'm not saying that a movie can never fully encapsulate everything that is war. But man, even now, I can only watch it once every couple of years because it's that powerful of a film. I mean, just seeing D-Day, whenever, they're in the boats and the door drops and instantly you just see bullets riddling these helmets and stuff. And it's just such a well done film. You know how The Matrix was revolutionary in that sense. This is what Saving Private Ryan did for action films and for war films, and it's jaw dropping to me that it didn't win to Shakespeare in Love. And that just goes, again, it's just another black eye to, this was ranked the 71st greatest film of all time by AFI. It's in the canon of the greatest films we've ever produced. And Shakespeare in Love, like I said, it's just this odd footnote. It's a decent film, but it is a throwaway film that isn't saying anything at large. And it's just it's just crazy. So Saving Private Ryan is my number 1. I also just want to take umbrage with the fact that Interstellar in 2015 never got nominated. Pulp Fiction and Shawshank losing to Forrest Gump. We've talked about that before. I hope you talk about it. And there was one more, Apollo 13 losing to Braveheart, I think I just said. But there's a lot of snubs, man. It was really hard to just pin some down, but Saving Private Ryan is just a travesty.
I think in 98 when Shakespeare in Love won too, you got to remember too, it's sometimes not always about the best picture. There's a lot of politics that goes on with the Oscars, and that's always an issue too. And you got to think, as far as the Academy is concerned, the Academy has always looked at more artful films and that kind of stuff, and performance-based kind of things. There are lots of actors in the guild, and but the thing is that there's a lot of the thing with Spielberg is the most successful director that has ever lived. But from an Academy point of view, I think they always kind of look at him as being a popcorn movie kind of guy. And so from a political point of view within their ranks, I think they kind of felt like, well, 5 years earlier, we gave him the best picture, for Schindler's List. So, he's good. He's got his award, even though they gave him director in 98 for Saving Private Ryan, which he deserved for the opening 20 minutes alone of that movie. But, I mean, there's so much politics involved. I think that they still don't take Spielberg all that seriously, unfortunately, which is, a bit of a joke, but it's part of the politics. I agree, by the way, about 94. Forrest Gump won. Pulp Fiction should have won. Another one I mentioned is in 1999. I wanted to leave this one alone because it's kind of in your wheelhouse, but American Beauty won that year, and The Sixth Sense was the best movie that year. There's no way that American Beauty is one of the worst films to ever win Best Picture, in my estimation. But, okay, my number one, though, I'm going all the way back to 1977. No surprise here. The winner was Annie Hall, but the movie that should have won was Star Wars. And I mentioned this on previous podcasts as well. Star Wars was nominated for Best Picture in 77, but lost to Woody Allen's, quirky comedy about, relationships in New York. And Annie Hall is a good movie. I'm a big fan of that movie. I like it a lot. But there's no way, looking back in history, that you can say that the Best Picture of 1977 was not Star Wars. It deserves to have been Best Picture, and it certainly was better than Annie Hall, as much as I liked Alvy Singer and all of his antics that were going on with him and Annie Hall. It doesn't hold up to Star Wars. So Star Wars was definitely the number one of that year. Anyway, let's. What do you say we have some
fun with Yancy?
Here's what we're going to do this week, Yancy. I'm just going to ask you some trivia questions, okay?
Okay.
On Best Pictures throughout the years, okay? So
La La Land, name the film kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're going to do, okay? So let me just see here. So La La Land, we're talking about La La Land, right? So right. It's nominated for 14 Academy Awards, okay? And that ties a record for the most nominations for a film in a single year. Two other movies have both landed 14 nominations in a single year. Can you name one of them?
I'm going to say Mad Max. No. Mad Max won a lot of awards. Are you sure?
Was not nominated for 14 Academy Awards, though.
Oh, what else has been nominated for a lot of stuff?
Oh, you were around at this time, buddy. You were around. You were about 9 years old in 1997.
97.
And you had a big sinking feeling about this movie.
The Titanic.
Yes, Titanic. The other one was back in 1950, All About Eve. Both of them were nominated for 14 Academy Awards. Okay. So all this talk about La La Land tonight, I think it was interesting. So basically, I'm sure, with all the talk of that, you're wondering how many musicals, have actually won Best Picture. Well, it turns out 9 of them have. 9 musicals have won the top prize at the Academy Awards. Yancy, can you just name one?
I cannot. I can't.
One? No.
I'll guess and say Grease. But
no. Grease wasn't winning. I'm sorry. No, and I mean some of these that you've heard of. You've heard of An American in Paris. You've heard of West Side Story, My Fair Lady, The Sound of Music, Oliver. But in
The Sound of Music,
in 2002, Richard Gere. Yes. No. Renee Zellweger.
No.
Chicago. In 2002.
Oh, that movie is terrible.
Well, won Best Picture. Okay, so this film was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, and it won all 11 of them, marking the very first and only time a movie has swept all of the Oscars that it was nominated for. Can you name the movie?
Can you give me some sort of hint?
2003.
It won 11?
Was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, and it won all 11. And really, it won the awards because it was part of a trilogy, and it was the third film in a trilogy.
Oh, The Lord of the Rings.
Yes, and it really won because it was sort of an award for the whole trilogy. You know what I mean? And I think they really rewarded the whole thing. That's for sure. And, okay, so 11 Oscars that it won. Lord of the Rings wins 11 Oscars. That's a lot. It actually tied 2 other movies with the most Academy Awards ever, with 11. Can you name either one of the 2 other movies in Oscar history to go home with 11 statues in one night?
I'm sure they're both going to be really old films, so I'm going to just take a lucky guess because we just talked about it. I'm going to say Titanic is one.
Very good. Titanic is one. And all you need to do is name one. Any chance you could maybe name the other one?
It's going to be something from the 50s or 60s, but no, I can't.
Yeah, it's Ben-Hur from 59. So I mean,
okay.
Okay, so sequels. Right? We always are knocking sequels around here, but Yancy, one sequel actually won an Oscar for Best Picture. Can you name which sequel won Best Picture?
Terminator?
1974. Way back. But think about what was it? Any chance?
Give me a hint.
Marlon Brando?
Is it it's The Godfather?
The
Which one
Godfather
is it?
Part 2.
It's Part 2.
Part
Okay.
2 won in 1974. The Godfather won in 72, and The Godfather Part 2 won in 1974. Okay.
These are tough.
Last one. I thought these were pretty easy. So here's an easy one for you. You're going to
course you would think
totally
they're
get
pretty
this.
easy.
You're going to get this one. Beginning in 2001, Yancy. It's right in your wheelhouse. The Academy has given out an award for Best Animated Feature every year since 2001. But however, since then, 2 animated films have actually been honored with a nomination for Best Picture as well. Can you name both of them?
They were nominated for Best Feature?
Yep.
Or Best Picture?
Yep. So since 2001, they give out Best Animated Feature, but 2 movies since then have also been nominated for Best Picture that year.
I'm going to go with Toy Story 3.
Toy Story 3, and that's why I'm asking for 2, because you already mentioned that one earlier. So
It's definitely a Pixar film. It's either WALL-E or it's Finding Nemo.
no, it has to do with balloons. Ed
Oh,
Asner. Up. That's correct. Yeah.
Up is a tearjerker, Chris.
It sure is. It's a good movie, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so there you go. So not bad. I got a chance to talk about a musical that we both liked, and maybe surprisingly so, with La La Land, and a little bit of talk of lots of Oscars and lots of movies that we think deserve to be there. If you would like to reach out to us, please do so on Twitter at Yancy Eaton or at C McBrien. Shoot us an email, Chris or Yancy at popgoesyourworld.com. As always, on behalf of Yancy Eaton, this is Chris McBrien saying thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thank you for listening to the Pop Goes Your World podcast. Continue the conversation on Twitter at C McBrien or at Yancy Eaton. Please consider leaving a review for the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.